Right, moment of truth. Now, we was talking about using a blue tint for the roof. Can't see a blue tint. A lot of modelers seem to use green as a more of a tint, and I sort of go with that. I get it. But actually, when I'm looking at it, they have a very smoked tint, or it just seems to be the way. It's one of those things, it's an awkward shot to get with a helicopter, because normally you're looking across it and it just looks dark. And then one's from inside sort of looking up. It depends on the sky conditions, things like that. And obviously from a photography point of view is how the camera's set up. So what I think I'm going to do is just going to give it a smoked tint. Now, there's multiple ways of doing tinting on canopies and things like that. So basically what we're talking about is these at the top here, windows. So I've masked them off. Still got the center frame in there, and if you wanted to, you could mask that off as well, which I might do. I might just pop a bit of tape in there in a minute. But thinking about the best way of doing it. Now, technically, the tint is part of the glass. It's a tinted piece of glass. It's not like a film that's been put on there or something that's sprayed on. It's afterthought. So what I would normally do is spray the inside out. Okay, so if this was a separate piece of glass, I would flip it over and I'd spray the inside. That way you've got a nice glassy finish on the top side and all the rest of it. For this one, because it's a one piece though, you don't have that luxury, so you have to paint it separately. Now, if it was flat, I would hand paint it. I would make up a very thin mix of what we're going to do, and I would just dab it on and let the capillary action self-level and go along. Unfortunately though, this is on a curve, and because of that, it's going to drag down and go to the edges. So then we need to spray it on. So from that point of view, it's a case of, right, how are we going to go about it? So from what I've done here, I've got some X19, which I've had this bottle now for nigh on 20 years, and it keeps on getting shaken up and thinned and everything else. And what we've done in here is I've added a little bit of thinners already into here, and I haven't got much left, so you probably see, and I got a little bit of smoke. All right, so what we're going to do is very lightly spray this on. So we're going to spray it on, we're going to make a layer of it, and then what we're going to do is going to come back with thinners and then try and seal that, and then maybe even with a bit of gloss on top to seal that down to give us a nice finish. Okay, so it depends on how it's going to spray. The secret to this is a very fine mix. You want it to be very thin. If it's too thick, it's almost going to pebble dash it on there, and you don't want that type of effect. If it's not thin enough, it's going to pool in certain areas, so you just need it to blend on and go down very nicely to give you a nice even finish. So what we've got down in here is my airbrush. It's running clean, we're all good. So we're just going to put, and I've already mixed this up because it's literally all we got. We're only going to need a dribble, so that's all we got down in there. And we're just going to grab a little bit of kitchen roll just to have a see what we get. Now again, we're not trying to colour in here or anything else like that. We are literally just trying to fill in an area. So air, and it looks smooth. Okay, it's not deliberately colouring it, it's not too dark. So all we're going to do is going to come along and we're just going to blow this over the top. Okay, so we're taking a step back, we're looking at it, we're going to dry it down a little bit, we're going to go to the other side, but we are literally hardly any paint coming out. And you say paint, it's not even paint. Okay, and what we're going to do now is just kind of evenly build up the top. Now it's going to go slightly cloudy because of the way we're doing this, but what we're going to do is going to come along and gloss this afterwards. Okay, so we're looking through it and we're trying to see how much tint we physically got on here. Okay, so we're just drying this down now. So we just cut to air, nothing but air coming through, and then we're going to slightly get closer and we're going to slightly flood this on to start the glossing process. So what you're trying to do now is get it to melt the coats below and then all to dry as one. Now what you're trying to avoid though is it looking speckly and stiff and everything else like that. Okay, so now we just cut to air. We're going to dry this layer down. And again, it's just a thin tint. So we just air. Okay. So we're happy. Check our flow again. Happy. And another coat. So quite a high air pressure, building up nicely, and then coming in slower, thicker colour to wet it down so then it can all stick. Okay, and what you're trying to do is somewhat look through it to see how we're getting on. Cut into air, and we're just going to slightly build this up with every pass, just trying to colour this in. Okay, so this is just air, and what it'll do, it'll stop it flooding and running away from you, okay? So this is just air, and then again, probably for the last time. Okay, we're just going to come in, another coat. So this is a nice dusty coat. Cut to air, just going to dry that down a little bit. I'm looking through and it's starting to tint quite nicely. And then again, a more of a wetter coat. Okay. And actually, I think I'm going to probably end about there. Okay, so what we're going to do is going to let that naturally dry off and do its bit. Okay, and then what we can do is that centre bar, obviously it's going to be glossy now by its nature, so we can actually come in with a little bit of flat on a very fine brush and just put that back in. Okay, fading that pigment over the top, which is what we're going to do with this anyway, it will make that go off. So what we're going to do is, you don't do this at home of course, because you would be so silly to try and unmask this before it's dried, but yeah. So what we're going to try and do is get this off before it dries, just to show you guys, and that's exactly what we don't want. Do not drop your tape or anything into the surface. And that's actually worked quite nicely. So there we go, we've got that tint on the top now. You can see the definite change in the two. So you've got the tinted and then obviously the clear, and that is exactly what we're after. So that's worked actually better than I thought. So what you might want to do now with that is cover it, completely cover it in all the time. You can see the bar difference on the top. What I'm going to do, when that's totally dried, I'm actually going to come in with a little bit of pigment, thinking about it, and just give it a little rub right the way over that. But actually that has worked out a lot better than I thought it would. So it's one of those nice surprises where you're thinking, right, it should work, but actually that's worked well. Remember, secret to doing this process, very light, very thin coats, and just build it up. If you flood it, it will pull, it will go globby and bits and all the rest of it. Okay, so just be mindful how you're actually putting it down. Just build it up very, very gently. Perhaps we're doing just there. So nice dusty coat, dry it off, heavy coat, dry that off, dusty coat, dusty coat. So you just build it up quite slowly. But actually, I am chuffed as a nut with that. That's worked out better than I thought it was going to. So that's actually very, very nice indeed. Okay, so what we're going to do, let that dry. Might do a little bit more just with pigments around it, just clean stuff up. A lot of it is where I'm handling it and all the rest of it. But what we can do now is actually get the rotor head fixed onto this one as well, and do the final details, the lights, all those types of things down in there. Okay, so we are in the final stages. We've gone along and we put some things on. So the rotor head has just been put on and glued in. We've just been along with a little bit of flat paint. I'm just putting that centre part again, a little bit of tidy up. To be honest, use a little bit of pigment dust on my finger, just rubbed it over the top of the canopy. Really, it's just, you know, continuity, making everything look the same. Okay, down and inside, we've put in, you might be able to see, we've got the control grips, which are currently the wrong colour, so that's why we are here. So I've just got some black paint, and we're just about to touch these in right now. Okay, so we're just going to come in. Now, we didn't do these before because, quite frankly, they would have been knocked off. So that's the theory by doing them now. Okay, so that's one side of those, and then we can just come in and do the other side. So there we go. Control grips done and painted, so that's those in just like that. Okay, so looking really good on all of those. And then we've got a little fire extinguisher just in here. So we've just got to do the cone for the end, and then that can be glued in place, which we'll probably do afterwards, but it's just got a little cone just on the end here, obviously just for spray. Okay, so that's all good. So that's taken care of as well. So that's pretty much ready to go in. That can just be put on. That's going to glue just literally to the floor. At the same time as well, brush out of the way, we've also put the lights on, so I'm just checking my hand as well. So tail light has been put on, a little bit of orange paint in there, and we are good to go. And again, we just tidied up some of the work around the guns. We've installed the actual front light on here as well. Okay, and pretty much calling this one done. There's just a few little bits and pieces just to go on, tidy up a couple of the aerials, tiny little bit more, but I was going to go in there with some chipping and some wear and tear. Don't seem to have it. That's the point. They have some wear, but not like on a massive scale. So what I'm probably going to do is call it quits on this one. It's one of those ones where, you know, where we always say it, and I think it's quite a good point, is that thing when you think you've overdone the weathering, it's stop. And I think I'm pretty much there. I'm just really happy how it's turned out. I'm just, hopefully you guys will be able to see what I can see, because on camera I don't think it's projecting that well with the discrete weathering that we've done on this one. So what we're going to do, we're going to let those bits dry in there. We're going to install the actual fire extinguisher into the other side, and I think what we'll do is just some very light weathering just around, just some little scuffing that we were talking about before, and we'll be ready for the final reveal. And there we have it. We are finished off. So literally all we did was give it a very little rub with some pigment. So we just used a little bit of light earth actually, and we just went in and we've done some work around on the floor. So if we show you down in here, so you might be able to see, got some in the floor, we put some over the seats, some over the instrument panels, things like that as well. And in the back, just to blend everything nicely together, and the roof. And so you've got the flatness on the top there. And as you can see, just a general bit of a whip round everywhere. And then over here you can see we've put the fire extinguisher in. So we've got the fire extinguisher in there. Control grips are all in and looking good as well, so no problem with those. And that brings it to an end. And I have to say, two words that I never thought I'd ever use was fun build and Kitty Hawk together. Because the Kitty Hawk, notoriously difficult to build, notoriously bad instructions, notorious for everything. And this actually is the first time I've put one of the kits together and really enjoyed it from start to finish. Yes, there's issues. Yes, there's problems. Yes, I just wish they would spend another 2 months of their development stage and just get rid of the kinks, because there's lots of kinks in this one. The main one, I think the bugbear for me, is the lack of instructions. These instructions are pretty much useless. Not only do they have the wrong part numbers, which lead you astray, but also you're not quite sure what version you're doing down in here, because obviously it's saying about it's an AH-6J and an MH-6J. So obviously AH attack helicopter, that's the gunship version, yeah, that's one we're doing. But then you've obviously got the MH version, which is the utility version, and that one then has the actual fast rope bars, the planks on the side and all the rest of it, but they have different configurations with aerials and various lumps and bumps all over them, but it doesn't tell you that. The other problem you've got, of course, is that there's a lot of descriptions in here which talk about, and we haven't covered this yet because I didn't really see the relevance, where is it? There it is, of this one. So down in here we've actually got the 6-bladed version, which is the new one with the chin turret, and it calls out for decals on there. There's decals for them, it's got all the bits, but it's not actually included in the kit. You get the extra blade, but you don't get the extra hub and swash plate with the 6-sided blade. And also this one has a twin tail system on it as well. So you've actually got 2 tail rotors, where in our case, we only have the one. So again, it's a bit like, so you've got markings down in there for something, special operations in Somalia and everything else like that, but actually this version I don't think was even around in Somalia, the 6-bladed version with the FLIR system on the front. I think it was just the standard version. That one is a lot later, it's a more powerful version, it's got an upgraded engine as well, I do believe, and there's a few other lumps and bumps differences between them, but again, Kitty Hawk don't actually mention that. So that's 3 versions in one box, and you're not quite sure what's what. The thing is, being a special operations helicopter like this, they are prone to being upgraded, updated at a drop of a hat, and you're never quite sure which one and what type it was and everything else. And again, special operations helicopters, by their notion of them, very difficult to get reference photos and things like that with them. So what I've tried to do is just make a homage to the little bird, as in the way I like it. It's using that type of standard attack helicopter one, the standard weapons load and things like that. Again, the other bugbear is obviously it shows it here with 2 rocket pods. Yeah, you only get 1, or you get the giant one, which you don't really see it carrying because obviously of a weight issue, but the bigger rocket pod for it as well. So it'd be nice if it just carried the 2 7-shot rocket pods rather than obviously the bigger one and the smaller one as well. That said though, attention to detail in this helicopter is second to none. Some beautiful little touches is the one. The main one I absolutely love is the guns. The guns are highly detailed. The 7.62, and then obviously we've got the 50 gal one on there as well. They are beautifully done. It's very nice as well with the ammunition feed tracks down on here. That's another nice touch, having those in photo etch, because you can bend them very realistic rather than a plastic one, which is a little bit two-dimensional. Seat belts as well, no problem with those. With the harness set in there, it finishes it off very nicely. The cockpit is highly detailed as well, which is a nice touch. The rotor head system, things like that, very detailed, nice as well, all the way through, and all the lumps, bumps, the strengthening plates on the aircraft and everything on the fuselage sides, lovely. Engine, yeah, okay, like we said about before, I'd love to have it open, but if you're going to do it properly, you'd have to wire it up and do a lot more. I couldn't find reference photos when I needed them to be able to do that particular one with this particular kit. Glass. You're always going to have problems with helicopters and glass. It's a notorious problem. The framing is very thin normally because obviously it doesn't have to take, you know, fast jet aircraft, things like that. So from that point of view, you're going to have very close to glue marks and glue joints and things like that. We basically got away with it, luckily. I say luckily because there's a couple of places, if you look for it, you will see it. It's just one of those things at the end of the day. But apart from that, by taking out that height of the actual glass part on the front, which we spoke about and we showed, we ground ours down, that makes it for a perfect fit on the glass. Now, I've had people message me throughout this entire build saying, Phil, the glass is awful, it doesn't fit and everything else. That's the only problem I could find with it. So if you take that little bit of height out of that one, you'll have no problems with it at all. It's just, it's one of those little tiny things that makes a big difference, because by taking the height out, all of a sudden the glass fits. Without it, there's gaps and it's woeful and it just doesn't line up. Getting that right is actually essential for this helicopter, especially when it's all glass at the front like this thing is. Because it's a glass fronted helicopter, it's all bulbous, everything's on show, it's where your eyes are going to be drawn to it. Apart from that, it's a great helicopter. It is really, really nice. It goes together, as I said, exceptionally well. Just check your references, keep an eye on what you're up to, check things off obviously before you build to make sure you know what version you're doing, and if you can, get yourself some really good references and stick to it. See what you've got and build it to that specification. Otherwise you can be led astray of all different types of aerial configurations, lumps, bumps and all of those, which is a little bit different. There is another version of this particular one out as well, which is technically the AH-6, which has the crew and it has the actual passengers on the boards on the side. So you get 4 special operations troops fully kitted out, which sit on the boards, and obviously 2 pilots on board the helicopter as well. It looks to be really, really nice. I haven't seen that particular one yet, but definitely be on my hit list to get one, because after building this, you just know that one's going to go together really nicely as well. I'm really excited because we're expecting a Black Hawk to land very, very shortly, hot on the heels of this particular bird, in the same scale as well, being 1/35. And again, if it's anything like this helicopter, it's going to be a must, because now we have that definitive AH-6 little bird in whatever configuration you want it to be in, and then hopefully we're going to get the actual Black Hawk to go along with it. And like we've got down here, the Black Hawk Somalia scene and things like that. If you wanted to sort of, you know, pay homage to that particular theatre or any other theatre using special operations helicopters, these are definitely going to be ones to go for. I've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, join me again next time.